أبي القاسم محمد وآل طيبين الطاهرين المعصومين صلوات. اللهم صل على Muhammad وآل Muhammad. First, we would like to recite a Surah Fatiha for all of the shuhada that we've had in this past couple of years, where we've had so many people be martyred. And of course, the Sayyid of them, Sayyid al-Shahid al-Rahbar, and we have Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and we had before that uh, the Sayyid al-Raisi. We also had um, uh, Yahya Sinwar and many other leaders who were martyred in this past few years. And then also many of the mu'mineen from both Sunni, from Shia, who were all martyred in these past few years resisting oppression. So, and also mustadafin all around the world. Please recite aloud salawat and then recite Surah Fatiha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فذكر إنما أنت مذكر. So remind them, surely you are but a reminder. So we have the continuation of how Imam Husayn gave new life to the message of all of the prophets, and of course to Prophet Muhammad. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Salli ala Muhammad wa alayhi. And we have to really think about that point for a bit, because the message of the entire prophets which came before were completed by Prophet Muhammad, but also continued by Prophet Muhammad. And the world had come to a state of sort of falling apart. And had the message of Prophet Muhammad been lost at this point, the message of all of the prophets would have been lost. So we kind of forget that. Even the Judaism and Christianity and whatever other religions out there that still exist, they are all affected by Islam. Like the Christianity that we have now is not just the Christianity of the past in continuity, or the Judaism that we have now is not the Judaism that they had then continued to now. All of them were affected by the advent of Islam. So these people had lost a lot of their way, a lot of the impetus, a lot of the momentum that they had as world-changing religions had become lost, that they didn't know what they were doing. When Islam came, it also corrected, those people reacted to Islam and were brought nearer because they tried to now make up for the weaknesses in their own religions that were made evident by the existence of Islam. Okay? So when they interacted with Islam, especially in the post Imam Hussein era, because the pre Imam Hussein era, they got taken over. But the intellectual challenge had not really hit, it had not really sunk in. That the fact that their religions had intellectual issues hadn't sunk in. They thought that, no, we're still right. We have a chance for a comeback. It's just a matter of time, was the sort of thought process of all of these different groups of people. However, because Islam continued as a religion, because even people don't realize, even like Sunni Islam or whatever, all of it is now connected back to this event at Karbala, because it would have just become another political religion had this not happened. Just some sort of framework where they're instead of having a king, you have a person who calling himself Khalifa, but everything else, and maybe the people pray, but all the meaning of the religion would have been lost. But because of the example of Imam Hussein and his revival, These things got rectified in Islam, even in the sort of common Islam that the people were practicing, which now became known as Sunni Islam. And then much more so, obviously, in the Shia Islam. So Christianity now had to deal with the issues that it had. It had to deal with explaining God to people. It had to deal with all of these things that came up by the rise of now a powerful religion and right and wrong. Even like the idea of like freedom of religion and things like that that we have here, it came because the Muslims had that in their country, and the Christians would come back and refer and say, hey, this isn't how everybody's doing things. And so then they said, if we ever get a chance to make a country from scratch, this is something we want to bring in. They thought it was from the Ottomans. They were like, we see the Ottomans, the Christians of different sects can live in peace and harmony. Maybe if we ever get a country, we will borrow that idea. When the Judaism, when they tried to be like, how can we explain God and the rationale and the logic, they went and they borrowed from the Islam, which was borrowing from Imam Sadiq and things like that, to try to come up with some explanation. So even the Christians, they borrowed a lot from Islam in their explanations to try to explain their religion to themselves, and all of the breakthroughs that they had and the intellectual advances and things like they had. These were spurred by their interaction with the Muslims. It wasn't something that just occurred in their own on their own and would have occurred even if they had been left to their own devices. How can we say that? Because they were left to their own devices. Before Islam hit them, they had hundreds of years of Christianity to play with, and they were stagnant. They were just superficially religious, and they did that. They were still, most of Europe was barbarian and things like that. It hadn't really sunken in. So in their interaction with Islam and how the Muslims dealt with things, not taking their own people as prisoners and things like that, then that raised the akhlaq and the acceptable behavior for the entire world, not just the Muslim world. Obviously, it raised it the most for the Muslim world, but even in the sort of spin-off empires, they were affected by that, and their behavior became better as well. So the issue we're talking about here is dhikra, or dhikr. Where is this word coming from, and what does it mean? A lot of times when we look at the Quran, we can kind of get an idea of what these words mean by looking at other uses of similar words. One of the things that we have is that we have the word dhakar, which is, you say that's kind of meaning male. So what does dhakar have to do with zikra? We have example where they say, well, this is talking about the Ummah of Maryam. She says, "Walaysa dhakaru kal unta," that the female is not like the male is not like the female. Or you have another one, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ أَنْ لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِنْكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرِ أَوْ أُنْثَى. So we can see that they're using the same form. And these words in Arabic is not random. It's not like English, like the word has nothing to do with the other one. There's a connection between these words most of the times. There's some words it has nothing to do, but most of the words, if it's from the same root, there's some connection in the meaning that why is one like the other. So untha is coming from softness or femininity. That's where this word is. That's where you get female from, the softness and the femininity. Dhakar, because the men get mentioned more. In the society, it's seemingly more important. So this is where dhikr and reminding, because it's mentioned more. So if you mention something a lot, then it's dhakar. This is the linguistic connection. But we see it in the meaning of reminder, those who remind, and mentioning, to repeat something a lot. So, and what we see also is that it is usually coming with reason or khushu. I'll give you an example. Hudan wa dhikra lil ulil albab. A guidance and a reminder to those who have intelligence or they have wisdom. We have another one, which is Innal Hasanat Yudhibna Sayyi'at. That the good deeds cause the evil deeds to go away. ذَلِكَ ذِكْرَ لِلذَّاكِرِينَ. And this is a reminder to those who are remembering that the good deeds push away the bad deeds. Very interesting ayah, because some people think it's the other way. If I do bad deeds, then somehow, like sometimes people will say, you shouldn't be making salat because you don't have a beard or something. Some people, you see people making statements like that. Oh, if you're committing this sin, you shouldn't commit the good deed. No, you commit the good deed, sooner or later, it will defeat the bad deed. That the salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. If the person is having, which is sometimes you see somebody, if he's struggling with a sin, or you see yourself struggling with a sin, then start committing. It's not, oh, you shouldn't even bother to commit the good deeds. No, you should continue to commit the good deeds as much as possible. And then what will happen is that act of doing good deeds will cause you to no longer commit bad deeds. So also, the good deeds are worth more than the bad deeds with Allah. So if you're committing good deeds all the time, then those are worth more. One is they prevent you from doing it. Even some people say this is something very interesting, is that if you do good deeds, one of the things that happens is while you're doing the good deed, you're not able to do the bad deed. So this is something which is very good, that like, even if it's just that, because some people, all their life is evil deeds. I knew people like that. Everything, they had some kind of makar behind it. There was some sort of plan. They couldn't just do just a simple, there's a faqir and they take out their money and give the faqir 5 cents. No, they have to be like, well, I wonder, maybe he'll owe me, or maybe some people will see me. They couldn't do any good deeds. If you do real sincere good deeds, you can't do bad deeds while you're doing them. We have another one that just, that it's a explaining what the Quran is. إنه إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين. That it's nothing else except that it's a reminder. And the Quran, which is clear. So let's take a thought where we look at this. Why is there so much importance of reminder, and what is they being reminded of? Because usually if you say you remind someone, it means that person knows it already. Like I can't remind you of something that you didn't know, even though sometimes it's in the meaning of mention, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ something. Sometimes it's mention it. Sometimes it comes in that way. To mention something maybe people didn't know. Sometimes the Quran uses it in that way, but sometimes it's to remind them. So let's look a little bit at reminder, then we'll go into the mentioning. Usually people have some idea of what good behavior is. They know in their heart what it is. So when you tell them about it, they get pulled back to it. They get attracted to it. In their fitra, because they know in multiple ways. One of them is their fitra, that a human being knows what's right and wrong, kind of fitratan. An example is that this is something that Maulana Abbas pointed out in one of his speeches. He said that if you see Muslims in Muslim countries, they practice Islam pretty well, but their understanding is not that well. You might go to some village and they're practicing Islam. If you ask them why they do it, even the wrong things they do, they think is Islam. The right things they do, they think is Islam. But they're practicing pretty much 90% of the religion, right? Even though they might not have any ulama or anything like that. It's because Islam is going with their nature, so it's not hard to actually practice. If Islam was a rather hard religion, it would be hard to get some people to do something in a far off corner of, Asia or Africa or whatever, because the religion is just too hard. It's so unnatural. But because the religion goes with the natural flow of humanity, the people tend to do it to 80, 90%, even when they don't have that much knowledge about what Islam really is and why we do. They don't, like, you find some village and you ask them, why do you wear hijab? They don't give you some detailed answer that the reason is because the woman, is expressing the jamal of Allah and the man is expressing the jalal. And so then the things which are jamal and beauty, you hide them, and the things which are jalal, they're presented. They don't give you some deep philosophical reason. They say, you know what? It's because men can't control themselves, and so women should wear hijab or something like that. Some very superficial, oh, you're just supposed to do it, it's better. Something like that will be their answer, right? The person didn't really understand it that well. But because it goes with their natural tendency, human beings inherently know that modesty is a good thing, especially for women. So you see these people who they have almost no understanding of religion, but they practice something like hijab. Why do they keep going and praying? Human beings know, yeah, you know what? It's a good thing. You don't really have to explain them. Why is it 5 times? Well, because Prophet Muhammad went to, and it was supposed to be 50 and he came back and then he went and they reduced it to 5 and that gives the reward of 50. But if you do the mustahabat, you still come back to, they don't explain that. They just, that sounds kind of makes sense. You should remember Allah a certain amount of times a day. This is without some kind of deep understanding, but they're able to do it. Why? Because it's not taqiyya, it goes with their natural tendency. This is one reason, just going back to the hijab thing, one reason why they don't like it over here is because of that. When the other people see the Muslim women in hijab, it reminds them of their fitrah, for the women that they should be wearing it, for the men that their wives should wear it, that this is to them, like aqlan, it seems like a beautiful thing and it attracts people to Islam. If it was naturally seen as ugly and naturally seen as repugnant, would they have to go over and do all kind of tabligh and explain that, this means this and that means they're terrorists? They wouldn't have to do that. They would just be like, look at them. I'm not going to explain anything. They're like, there's a woman in hijab. You take a look for yourself. You tell me what you think. They would do that. They wouldn't have to prep it. They wouldn't have to explain. They wouldn't have to do all of this, that, and the other, because it would just be ugly on its surface. When it's attractive on its surface, you have to explain. Like if I'm going to come and I've fixed some delicious food for you and this, that, and the other. And you can smell it wafting through and you see me stirring it and, I don't know, setting it on fire and stuff, all the things that these expert cooks do. And I sit it in front of you. You're like, okay, mashallah, time to dig in. I'm like, oh, wait. Before you eat, I have to explain that it's actually poisonous and you're going to gain weight and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. I have to do this, that, and the other to try to get you not to eat. But if it was terrible looking and it smelled bad and it was horrible, I don't have to, you'd be like, yeah, what is this, trash? Is this for the pigs or something like that? It's for the dogs. Obviously, it's not for us. There's no reason to do this preamble. But because it's beautiful to them, beautiful to their fitrah, it's attractive to them, that's why they go through this whole rigmarole of explaining why it's wrong. So one of the things that it does is it reminds people of those fitrati things that are in Islam, that when you mention them to people, they know it's the right thing to do. They know that telling the truth is better than lying. They know that praying is better than not praying. They know that fitratan, people know you're supposed to fast. You see that they make up fast. If there's not a real fast, they'll make up a fast. People know you're supposed to make pilgrimage. If there's not Hajj, they go and they make pilgrimage to Disneyland and this, that, and Elvis's house and Hollywood or whatever. They make pilgrimage. You're gonna make Hajj anyway, so you may as well make it and make Hajj and make ziyarah, because you're gonna spend the money anyway. You may as well do it fi sabilillah. But human beings, fitra, human beings, nature, human beings, instincts are to do those sorts of things. And their other instincts, the things that they do too much, they know in their heart that those things are done too much. The things that they say, oh, no, they would like to, sleep around and drink and this, that, and the other. That's people's nature. But then why are they attracted towards stopping those things? If you say, you know what, you meet people, non-Muslims sometimes. All of us have some non-Muslims. You say, yeah, I gave up drinking. They're like, yeah, I really wish I could, but oh yeah, I had a father or mother or uncle or something, that guy was addicted, and all of them know it's a bad thing. You're preaching to the choir with all of these akhlaqi things. So having that and that reminder, that's why the disbelievers don't want you to mention it, because it reminds people of the right way. They don't want to see us here practicing. That was one of their big issues. They were like, you're basically rubbing it in our face that you don't believe. That was one of their things about the hijab, because for them, it was like rubbing it in their face that you didn't accept their system. No, they wanted you to be bad or at least appear to be in agreement. So when we bring out the Quran and Hadith and do, like, sometimes this Muharram processions and Adhan and things like that, I remember they were trying to work people up to make them dislike the Adhan. And everybody was like, ah, man, it's actually pretty nice and this, that, or the other. It didn't, because, yeah, it sounds good. I knew people who would become Muslim on the Adhan by itself. They would go to like a Muslim country and they would hear the Adhan. They're like, what's this? They're like, oh, it's the call to prayer. They're like, it's beautiful religion. I think I'm going to be a Muslim. Like, they didn't know anything else except that they were called to prayer. So it's one of the things is that another one of the fitrati ideas that we have is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there's one God and we should worship him. The reason we know that this is fitra, any of these other religions and their like aqa'id, you have to really go through hoops and loops to try to explain it to someone, and usually only their ulama claim to understand it. When you try to explain their beliefs, actually with some of them, even you ask two different alims from their community, they give you two different answers. I had friends who were Christians, and sometimes they're both sitting in front of me. Like I'm sitting there with two different Christian priests, and these are sometimes like semi-learned and sometimes very learned. I was sitting there with like Catholic people who had been to the whole shebang. And sometimes I'm sitting with like, these pastors or whatever. Right in front of each other, they give you two different answers if you try to explain the Trinity. Like with them both sitting there, they don't come to. Why is it that like every Muslim child can understand Qul huwallahu ahad? As soon as they can speak, they can understand the surah. You don't have to go through some long and you study for 50 years and this, that, and the other. And then, after you've been on a mountain doing, fasting and praying, and then mashallah, finally, Qul huwallahu ahad has sunk in. No, yes, a child, say he God is one. They're like, yeah, gotcha. There can only be one God. Yeah, I'm in. They'll pray to God and ask for things as little kids. They don't have to be like, first I have to understand, and then I go to the guru, and then I have to confess my sins, and after I confess say however many, and then after that, no, it's rather simple. They can understand. You want something, ask Allah for it. Okay, kids got you, he's in. The religion is very simple, and it goes with our nature. We have an ayah of Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna a'radna al-amana ala samawati wal ardi wal jibal. That Allah presented this trust, meaning this holding up this religion, to the heavens and the earth and the mountains. For abayna, and they refused it. An yahmilnaha wa ashfaqna minha wa hamal. So they said they didn't want to hold it. وَحَمَلْنَاهَا إِنسَانٍ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. And human beings, they took up the responsibility of holding up this, and they did oppression to it out of ignorance. So and this is a natural thing, meaning once you're sahib al-aql, once you have reason, this higher capacity of rationality that human beings have, automatically and instinctively, you take up the mantle of now holding up the banner of Tawheed. It happens simultaneously. When you have the capacity, you have the understanding, it comes with it that you are now holding up this banner, that you should follow the prophets. And this is something that Allah gave to Adam and all of his descendants, that if there ever comes to a prophet, they have to support him, is something that instinctively we know is there. That if there's truth that comes, you have to support that. Where do we get that idea? Why do we think that if there's truth, you have to support it? Everybody, you ask anyone around the world, which is one of the reasons why they try to keep falsehood and keep confusion, because human beings Allah has built that into their nature, that if there's truth there, you're supposed to support it. And the people who don't do that, it's something that kills part of their humanity. If you're the type of person who, no, I support a lie, it kills part of their humanity. They become a lesser human when they lose that capacity. And the ones who have that capacity and it burns more strong, then these become better humans when they awaken that part of their nature. And remember, we still have control. You can put it to sleep or you can awaken it. And that's one of the things that the examples of the Imams do. We see that when the Imam is there, this people making a hard stance on right and wrong becomes greater. You make a choice. First, it's kind of weak, but then you're like, you know what? I can't do this. I can't do this oppression. I can't oppress myself. I can't even just think it in my heart. You get forced to make a choice. Now, another thing that the Quran does and the Prophet do is they remind people of their righteous, like ancestors. They remind people of their righteous, righteous people in their community. Righteous, sometimes different. Every qawm has certain like figures that were righteous in the past. Sometimes they're usually confused to some degree, but those figures of righteousness, when they see the prophets and the imams, they now associate that with them and they get drawn towards that. Also, we see the benefit of the reminder, which is that that good people like to be reminded. They like to be reminded of goodness. Bad people dislike to be reminded of goodness. They like it that everybody's corrupt. Everyone needs either corrupt or they seem to be corrupt. Whereas good people like it that there's clear examples of piety and righteousness. There's a certain something which is that you have to have a certain amount of humility. This is one of the things that this reminder does, is it makes you humble. I see somebody better than me. Sometimes you're there, you go to the masjid and there's somebody who he can read Quran better than you can. You're like, I've been Muslim all these years, I've been practicing all these years. This kid came in and in 6 months, now his Quran is better than mine. Now, if you're bad, you get jealous or envious or you try to downplay it. If you're good, you're like, makes you realize, you know what, maybe I should put some more effort in. Sometimes you're from a race, your race has been Muslim maybe 100 years or 200 years or so at the time of the Prophet. You see somebody, this guy became Muslim today and he's practicing better than me. I remember there was some people who they did that. They would marry I remember some guys, they married a woman and then she became Muslim. And then years later, she was better than they were. So she was more practicing and fast. Really doing it and enthusiastic. If you're righteous, you're humble and you get inspired towards better behavior when you see something like that. That reminder pushes you forward. If you're unrighteous, it pushes you out, which is why we see some of the people who are the closest to the Ahlul Bayt, you see sometimes those were their worst enemies. The person should have known better. You had the example of Abbas, Hazrat Abbas, and you had Shimr. They were from the same like family. One of them is the most righteous, and the other one, instead of getting inspired towards righteousness and being a better person, he completely went off the cliff. He became brutal and horrible and was the worst criminal on the day of Karbala. Why didn't he get inspired? Some of the other wives, cousins, brothers, Abu Lahabs and things of the world, rather than get inspired by the Prophet, they turned away. Whereas other relatives and friends and family became even better people. The Hamzas and Jafar Tayyars and things like that of the world, when they were with the Imam and they're following and connecting themselves to the Imam, they became, great examples for humanity, even though they weren't necessarily ma'soom in the sense of the five ma'soomin. But we also have to look towards what is the opposite of a reminder and dhikr and hudan and all of this. This is ghafla, that a person is not paying attention. But it's different than not knowing. It's not nisyan. It's not that he was distracted for a sec. It's that he's in this state of not paying attention. We call it heedlessness. He's not caring or paying attention to the right thing at the right time. We have an ayah of Quran that it says, وَأَنَّا لَهُمْ ذِكْرَ وَقَدْ جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مُبِينٌ. This is these people that they're in hell. And they say that to Allah once they're in hell. They're like, we're mu'mineen. Like, now take us out. We can't punish us anymore. Now we're in hell. We see the fire. We see the angels. We see this. We see that. Take us out of the hellfire. We believe. Or sometimes, like Fir'aun, when he sees the waves crashing down, he says, I believe in the Lord of Musa. Now he says, and now you're reminded? And I already sent a clear message to you. Now it's too late. You were supposed to have paid attention when it was there. Another ayah says, Ulaika kal an'am. These people are like cattle, meaning they're just coming, eating, and going. Balhum adallu. Ulaika humul ghafilun. These people were heedless. They just came, they ate, they went to sleep. Came, ate, went to sleep. Came, ate, went to sleep. They weren't aware. They never used their higher functions. They just survived as beings, like animals. They never used those parts of their aql because they weren't paying attention. Now, the shaitan likes this because when you're in this heedlessness, one of the things you do is just drift like a boat without an anchor. This is what salat does. When I always tell people, make salat, make salat, make salat. It's like putting an anchor in the ground. The boat might bounce around, but it stays in the general location. If you take the anchor out, the boat starts to float away bit by bit by bit. One of the effects that can happen is when there aren't ulama in the community. It's similar to the salat. There's communities, some of the Shia communities, they would not have, they'd be even far off place. Maybe sometimes a lot of them were founded by some of these Imam Zadeh. They would go to some far place and they would preach Islam. After a while, they would die and they would maybe teach a few students. After a while, but it would die out, that no other ulama got sent there. And bit by bit, the people became irreligious, not because they were bad, but just because nobody was really explaining the issues. There was no reminder. So they knew what it was, but they didn't get reminded, and the people become corrupt because of their heedlessness. The shaitan likes confusion. You don't really know what the rule is, and so then it's easy for your hawa nafs to say, well, let's do this, because you just don't know what the actual rule is. Becoming more, like I said, already animal-like. Another thing that can happen is arrogance. You don't know what the rules are, so you'll decide what they are and then become arrogant about the fake rules that you made up in your mind that you don't even know what the real ones are. When you're in the presence of knowledge, then you realize that, no, wait, it kind of puts you in your place. Another benefit of the repetition is it's getting back to the basics. Like whenever you're struggling in your life, start paying more attention to your salat. If that's not working, make more salat, do more nawafil. Why? It's the most basic thing. Don't you already know what you say in salat? You're not saying anything new. It's the same surah that you already knew you're saying over again. It's just that repetition, getting better and better and better. To use a sports metaphor, I like sports metaphors because it's because it's the most physical thing. It's much more compressed than sort of immaterial things. If ever sometimes they have these really great sports stars. One of the things you see consistent, even if they're doing all kind of amazing things, is their basics are very good. Like the Michael Jordans of the world, or the Tom Brady's of the world, or the, I don't know, Tiger Woodses, or whoever's good at something right now. I don't know. Their basics are perfect. And you see them practice for a game, they'll be practicing the same basics over. They're not practicing the super moves. You'll see them bouncing the ball on their foot in a very basic drill. Or they'll be throwing the ball again and again and hitting the exact same spot on the wall until they can hit it in their sleep. Or shooting their free throws again and again until they're perfect. They don't see them practicing the crazy stuff a lot. They mostly, especially if they're struggling, if they go into a slump, they stop practicing the crazy stuff. They get back to the basics. As the guy who's joke, the practice, no, practice. Practice, practice, practice. They say practice makes perfect. So when you're trying to build up your ruh, you're trying to build up your personality, you're trying to build up your inside. You do it with practicing of those basic things. Please give salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So when we want to say, we talk about the Imams, we talk about how they remind us of and Imam Husayn did this, that he would remind people of what they could be and remind them of what they were. And we're going to read one ayah very quickly, then we're going to go into talking about more about Imam Husayn personally. Dhikrun wa rahmatan rabbahu abdahu Zakaria. Dhikr rahmata rabbuka abdahu Zakaria. Sorry, I misspoke. That this is coming when Hazrat Zakaria was remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That they said that he was remembering Imam Hussein when there's and then he wanted to have a son who was like Imam Hussein, who could be sacrificed in the way of Allah. That's when Allah gave him Hazrat Yahya, who was also beheaded. And it's very interesting that he ended up in the same place. Like he was beheaded in the masjid in Syria. That's the same place they brought the head of Imam Hussein. So when we're talking about this, we're going to mention two different companions of Imam Hussein today. So let's go to Karbala and try to put ourselves in the shoes of Imam Hussein and his companions. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We have the first companion that we're going to remember is Muslim bin Ausaja from the Bani Asad. He was one of those people who had grown up with the Imam. He was older than the Imam and he had seen all of the attention that the Prophet used to give to the children, and how nice he had been, and how justice that he had brought, and the hope that he had brought to the community, and had brought the whole entire race out of darkness and into light. He was over 70 years at the time. And he was one of the people who, after all of the oppression of the Bani Umayyah, he had called the Imam to come to Kufa and saw how the people betrayed him. So imagine how this brave Muslim would feel after that the people had made all of those promises that they would help the Imam, that they would support the Imam, and then they had abandoned the Imam, and he was the one who had written all the letters to the Imam and asked him to come. That you would feel personally responsible for bringing the Imam to this city, and then that the people had abandoned him, and now he had the choice. He could either abandon him too with the rest of the people, or he could join with the Imam and help the Imam and defend the Imam. So Muslim, he joined the Imam. He left the city and snuck out and left from Kufa and came into the camp of the Imam to be one of his supporters. And when the Imam gave people permission that if anyone wants to leave, he said, of course, I will never leave you, O Imam. He was there on the left side of the army. He was there with Habib ibn Muzahir, and he was defending the Imam and protecting the Imam with his life. He was even serving as a personal bodyguard to make sure that none of the arrows could hit the Imam, and they hit him repeatedly. He absorbed more than 13 arrows in the fighting. And finally, after he got tired, then he fell to the ground. And then Habib ibn Mazahir came and he said, I only have one request from you, my friend, that you continue to protect the Imam and die for the Imam and don't let anything happen to him. When the Imam came and was brought, and he was brought before him, Imam Husayn was distressed that he had saw that this brave Muslim had fought defending him. And he said, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. And those are of the men who have completed their promise. And of them there are those who wait and they have not changed in the least. We have another person who we want to talk about this reminder. This was Zuhair ibn Qayn. Zuhair was one of those people who knew about the Imam. He knew about the right of the Imam, and he was very brave, but he had now fallen into ghafla. He had now wasn't paying attention to his rights and his duties. And when the Imam was moving, he was trying to keep away from the Imam. And the Imam knew who he was. The Imam knew what type of heart that he had. And he kept inviting him to dinner and he was trying to refuse. And his wife said, no, you know what? Go to the Imam. How can the son of Fatima call you to dinner and you say no? So he went to the Imam and he met with him for dinner. And being in the presence of the Imam awakened that bravery, awakened his soul, that he realized that he had to make sure that he would not die unless he was defending the Imam. So he let his wife go. He said, you know what, you're divorced. I don't want anyone to harm you after me. And he became one of the best soldiers of the Imam. He fought on the right side of the Imam and he had command of one of that right side of the army. He delivered many speeches and then he walked into the battle. Imagine that we were in this place, that he was riding out into the battle after having been ghafla of the Imam and he had forgotten about the right, that he went and he began fighting and defending the Imam until now he got surrounded and he fell from his horse and his enemies came from all sides. He continued to try to fight to defend the Imam and then finally he got stabbed from the back and he got hit from the right and he fell down and he ran and he was hurt and he cried out, "Oh Imam, have I fulfilled my promise?" سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Hussein,